They were rampaging along, won their first 2 games. They've lost their last 2, but they could have probably won both of them.
Fantastic looking facility there in the deep south.
I'm sure they're going to come out firing tonight.
From memory, he was leading last week. Are you going to be leading this week, or?
From bottom with 6 points and second from bottom with 5. Yes and no. Yes and no. It paid off for them. They got a 2, double a 4 and won 6 points. Depends what the teams above you do, doesn't it?
Unbiased, Miles Davis. Welcome to Unbiased, where we look behind the scenes of bowls in New Zealand, the characters, the stories, the clubs, etc. I'm really pleased to be joined today by a name that I'm sure every bowler in New Zealand will recognise, Ali Forsyth. Ali, it's great for you to give us your time and to talk to you. I want to start right at the beginning. Where did you first make your appearance in this world?
In this world, well, I was born and raised in Nelson. Little place called Stoke, just south of Nelson. So, 1979 I was born, and first picked up a bowl when I was about 3 years of age. So, great little part of the world, and certainly one that is very dear to my heart.
Was that because of your parents? Were your parents involved in it?
Yes, so Mum and Dad both played indoor carpet bowls, and Dad was also very keen observer of the Stoke Bowling Club back in the day when they had the big invitation singles event. So we only lived 100 metres from the bowling club, so we used to go down every year and have a bit of a look, and it was only a matter of time before we both sort of got our teeth stuck into the sport.
What were your parents doing for a living? What was their professions?
So Dad, back in the day, had a few different jobs. Part-time, he was a security guard, but he also worked with the Ministry of Transport back in the day before they combined with the police. So he was part of the administration side there. And Mum was, she was a teacher and also involved with the childcare side of things.
Oh, that's a good varied and a good sort of community-based activities for both of them. You mentioned teaching. Schools. Where did you go to school, primary school, and then your secondary school?
So I went to the Stoke Primary School, which is very, very close to the Stoke Bowling Club, right next door, in fact. So, I went there and then progressed to Broadgreen Intermediate and then on to Nayland College.
Is that a decent college? Has it got a good reputation, or is it one where the sort of, lower quality of student has to go?
Oh, well, by my records, you'd probably say the latter. But no, I think Nayland was a pretty well received school. Certainly, it loved its sporting background, so that was certainly something that fitted into what I was looking at. Like certainly, probably just pass marks in the academic side of things, but certainly enjoyed the sporting recreation. So certainly. I played a fair bit of cricket and rugby union in my early days before I started getting into the bowls more seriously.
Right. So first we'll address your rugby sort of activities. What position did you play, and sort of how far did you go up the collegial tree?
Not too far. I played first 15 level for probably 3 or 4 years, but we were certainly on the lower scale of the rugby, certainly when you compare to Nelson College, who were getting in students from our island nations, and we're certainly a hell of a lot bigger than what we ever were. So we were sort of very much the second tier of our local rugby competitions. I played a bit of prop, bit of lock, reserve halfback, and reserve goal kicker, so a bit of jack of all trades, master of none.
That's not bad. I was just thinking though that you're probably underplaying yourself there. I mean, forget about the level of the school. There's not too much you could do about that as an individual. But 3 or 4 years playing first 15 is a pretty decent crack, unless of course you were still at school at the age of 25.
No, I certainly wasn't still. I left school at the earliest convenience of 17 or 18. It was not my sort of crack, to be fair. But I think it was one of those things that we had very few. I was a pretty big kid when I was 15, 16, 17. But so they had very few props and decent forwards. So I was pretty much just a stopgap and probably a bit too soft to be on the bottom of the ruck and malls sort of thing back in the days, but did my best.
What about cricket? You mentioned cricket as a game which I love as well. Were you a batsman, a bowler, or again a sort of jack of all trades?
Yeah, probably probably a bit of everything. Like sort of bat 6 or 7 and bowled a few bit of dobby and swing-ins from the left-handed side of things. So played it once again. Played first 11 cricket for 3 or 4 years, and played a little bit of rep cricket until I got to about 16. And I probably didn't really excel any further than that. But played one senior cricket game for Wakatu as a fill-in. So yeah.
That's not bad. It's quite a reasonable achievement. Obviously, you have other distractions in your life. When you left school, what did you do to earn some money?
Left school, went straight to Sealords, which was one of the local fishery companies down at the wharf there, and I worked there until I left to move to Australia. So I worked there for 8 years. Probably not an absolutely fantastic job as far as what you're actually doing, and the hours were pretty long, but they were absolutely fantastic employer, and looked after me great with any time off I needed for travel for bowls and things like that. So they were brilliant.
So you mentioned your activity. One of my sons did. He lived in the Chatham Islands for a while, and for a week he went out longline fishing on a boat. He reckons it's the hardest job he ever do, and he never wants to go to sea again. But what were you actually doing down at the docks? What sort of horrible jobs were you doing?
Oh well, just I was working inside the factory, so I didn't actually go out on the boat or anything like that. But I was just, once again, I was actually a general hand, so I could have been lining up for anything, fish filleting, working with offal, could have been in the freezers. There was numerous different jobs you could do down there, and it was pretty much whatever they needed, I was prepared to do.
Can you still fillet a fish?
Yeah, I probably could. Yeah.
It's just, I went out once on a MAF boat, and they tried to show me how to do it, but I'd probably take my thumb off if I tried to do it now. You mentioned it's fascinating that the relationship that so many bowlers over the years have had to have with their employer to get the time off. I mean, how did that work? You've said that they were generous with it. When you first approached them to get the time off, were they immediately there, or did you have to do some persuading or show them some results?
Oh, I think look, it was one of those things that for the first little bit, if you were just talking about domestic or national sort of things, you were taking your annual leave and stuff like that. But once it became international, they were excellent. They had no problems helping you out, and I was pretty lucky, in the regard that, like, for all my training and other things like that, I was finishing work at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I could, go to the gym, do my 2 hours practice and all that sort of thing, and do it relatively unhindered. So it was only for, going away and things like that required a little bit of assistance, but they were excellent.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a New Zealand thing. The New Zealand companies over the years, maybe sort of led by the All Blacks in the old days when they were fully amateur, New Zealand companies tend to be more understanding about those sort of things. You mentioned the gym there, Ali. Did you do a fair bit of sort of condition? What type of work would you do in the gym, and how do you think that it helped you?
Well, when I left high school, I was around 120 kilos sort of thing. So I was a pretty big unit. And once I'd started taking the bowls relatively seriously, I knew I had to lose a fair bit of weight. And so I think when I went to the World Champions in 2004, I was down to 96 kilos or something like that. So I was just doing, for me, it was mainly cardio with a little bit of strength and conditioning. But I very much enjoyed running whilst my knees allowed it. Don't sort of have the same freedom these days, but still do a heck of a lot of walking. And I think that was probably one of the few good things about the lockdown last year, is it allowed me to get out. We live currently 2 minutes from Mentone Beach, so I still do a lot of walking in my spare time. And I think it's one of those things that just getting the hours in the legs, and because we do spend a lot of time bowling on our feet, and having to have that sort of conditioning in your legs is pretty important.
You mentioned that you first sort of picked up the bowl at the age of 3. When did you start taking it seriously as you grew up?
Well, I was playing the indoor carpet bowls pretty seriously from the age of 7 or 8, so I had a pretty good background there, and first started taking outdoor very seriously when I was about 16, 17. So I was still playing, a little bit of cricket. I'd finished up with the rugby, or just about finished up with the rugby, and so I was still dabbling in other sports, but that was, its first joint seriously, 16, 17, 18 sort of thing.
How much do you think that the carpet bowls, the indoor bowls, helped your outdoor game, and in what areas? I'm just fascinated by it.
Yeah, well, look, I think, it gave me a massive advantage in head reading and angles and things like that, which are very similar. Obviously, you're taking it from, a game that's, sort of 10, 12-foot carpet and to, to the longer lengths. But I think, the strategies of the game are exactly the same. And, it's just a matter of getting used to the outdoor, environment of the wind and the grass and things that are slight variance. You still get variance in the indoor game of the carpets, where every carpet's slightly different and things like that. So your ability to read a mat is exactly the same as trying to, read a rink on the outdoor green. That there's still narrow hands and wide hands and things like that. So the theories and strategies are very, very similar, if not exactly the same.
When did you play your first outdoor nationals?
First outdoor nationals. It's a good question.
God, dig deep in that memory.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. I want to say it might have been Christchurch, I think. It was either Christchurch or Dunedin. It was definitely the South Island.
Yeah. We're narrowing it down now. Can you remember how old you were?
Yeah. It was less than 20, so 19 maybe.
Okay, so we'll do that. We'll do our research later, and we can find out and remind you of where you were actually playing. Can you remember how you went? Did you play singles, pairs, triples, or were you a member of fours? Can you remember what you were doing?
Well, when I went to Christchurch, I'm just not sure which way around it went. When I went to Christchurch, I played with my dad in the pairs. We just played the singles and the pairs. Didn't qualify in the singles. In the pairs, we made the last 32 or 16. And the Dunedin event that I would have been the next year, I played with Leo Leonard in the pairs, and we actually made the semi-final.
That's not a bad advancement there. When did you win your first national title? Because I understand you got 9, is that right?
Yes, have 9, 3 of each, 3 singles, pairs and fours. Won the first New Zealand singles 2002-3 in Wellington. Where I managed to beat a guy by the name of Phil Powell in the final. It was a very unexpected win, but sort of came along quite quickly. But certainly one that I remember like it was yesterday.
People often say in sport, that your first one is one of the most special. Do you still look fondly back on that?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, probably that would be. I mean, they're all special for their own different ways, but I think the first one was very special, and then to back it up going back to back and winning it the next year in Christchurch was also extremely special, and obviously winning the national pairs with my dad was the most special without any shadow.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit soft like this, and I get goosebumps when I think about you winning it with your dad. Just tell us a little bit about that. I think that was 2016, wasn't it, that you won the pairs? How did it come about?
Very strangely, right up until the last minute, I wasn't actually going to play in the nationals at all, and once I decided I was, I thought I'll come over and play the singles, and it was almost one of those things where take that seriously and find a partner and use that as a bit of practice, and ended up being the other way around. The singles ended up being a bit of practice for the pairs, because dad wasn't even playing at all at that stage, and I said to him, well, how about, you join up to a club and we'll have a bit of a crack? And he goes, yeah, right, okay, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. So he put a fair bit of time in, and yeah, went in with no expectations and just really enjoyed the experience and came out with the chockies.
Yeah, it's that's a fairy tale thing. That's a fair. I can imagine that your dad was pretty ecstatic as well.
Oh yeah, over the moon. Yeah, he's been an extremely competitive sportsman all his life, and I think that was, certainly a very, very special moment, and one that we'll never forget.
Did you ever play with Mum?
Only in the indoor game. I don't think we ever had it. We might have played once or twice, very socially at the outdoor, but nothing of any substance.
Now, your brother, Russell, I've got to find out the story about this. The treacherous swine went and played for Japan. I mean, how on earth does that happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's been over there for 20 years probably now. Went over there on a high school exchange and loved the country and culture and all that sort of thing, and came back and got his university degree, and then buggered back off over and started teaching in Japan and found a beautiful lady and lived happily ever after. So he ended up playing a little bit of lawn bowls over there and won their national singles, and lo and behold, I actually played against him round one at Warilla a few years ago in the World Cup, which was pretty amazing. And yeah, he's forged a pretty good life for himself over there. So yeah,
that's fascinating. I wasn't aware of that. What was that like, and what was the banter like on the green, or were you both serious?
No, we were pretty serious. There was plenty of banter beforehand, but it was one of those things where it's probably one of the most awkward games I've ever had to play internationally. But one that I wasn't prepared to get beaten in.
No, fair enough too. I mean, I've got a brother, and I know exactly what you're feeling like there. How heavy was the defeat you inflicted on him?
Yeah, no, it was pretty extensive from memory. I'll give him a bit of a touch up, but he plays very well for the amount of bowls that he can. The facilities that they don't have in Japan. Like he's fairly limited for, his ability to train and all that sort of thing. So he definitely did punch above his weight. He didn't quite make the playoffs, but he wasn't far off it. So, he's like me in the fact that he's extremely competitive, and, that gets him a fair amount of the way. But when push comes to shove, you've got to have had the runs under your belt and put the time on the green, and he probably just can't quite do that with his job and whatnot.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Very generous. I hope he didn't sulk for too long afterwards, like brothers can tend to do on the odd occasion. You made your debut for the Blackjacks in 2005. What was it like when you got the call up? Were you expecting it? Had you been tapped on the shoulder? Were you part of a sort of development program?
Yeah, well, at that stage, it was probably just after I'd won the World Champion of Champions, which you're not selected for. Obviously, that's the byproduct of winning the New Zealand singles. So I'd already been involved in the under-25s and under-30s scene for 3 or 4 years. And on the back of a couple of good results, I was hopeful of the call up for the Asia Pacifics in 2005, which was in Australia. And yeah, it was extremely exciting times, and an event that I still look back on and go, gee, what might have been. Won all of my games bar one in section play, and then got through to the semi-final before getting a bit of a touch up by Ryan Bester. So it was a great starting point for me. Unfortunately, from there I didn't get selected for the Commonwealth Games, but it was
Why
a great starting point.
I like sort of digging deep into this and sort of trying to unearth a bit of controversy in this. Why did you miss out on the Commonwealth Games? Did you upset someone? Had your form dropped off?
Oh, I don't think so. I think it was one of those things where it was probably a little bit of trial and error, and for whatever reason, they probably didn't think that I had enough experience internationally for a Commonwealth Games. So I had to. At the time, I certainly wasn't in favour of the decision, but you've got to be realistic about these things. I was only very early 20s, and we had a very experienced side at that stage. So I know from memory that Jamie Hill came into the side to play the pairs with Rowan Brassey, and Russell Meyer went to the single spot. So I was certainly up against some high quality I suppose opponents as far as for position wise, but as far as teammates goes, we had some great experience, and look, things didn't probably work out to plan for the New Zealand side of that Commonwealth Games. So, in hindsight, it might have been a good one to miss, but look, I was better for the experience, and the next time I got my opportunity, I certainly made the most of it.
So did it actually serve as a motivation for you? You say you're competitive. Did you just sort of knuckle down and say, right, I'm going to make sure that no way they can leave me out next time?
Yeah, well, I mean, after that, I think that was about October, early November, and then so I got the bad news the following week, and had a few weeks where I was pretty grumpy, and then got over it and actually made it through to the New Zealand singles final again in Wellington that year. So that Christmas, New Year. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to win that one, but certainly. It was a good little kick in the bum and a good little motivator. So, it's one of those things, how you choose to accept, the disappointment. Do you let it affect you? Do you use it as a bit of a motivator? And that certainly worked, as the latter in this case.
You've been, from people I've spoken to you and from what I've read around the place, that you've got quite an aggressive style, the way you play. Is that a fair thing? And is it something that you enjoy playing that way?
Yeah, well, look, I think it's one of those things where when it comes down to it, look, I know, my style of play, and I play to my strengths, or what I perceive to be my strengths. And, some days it's, if my draw game's going really well, then I'll back that to the hilt. But, if there's other days where it's a 50-50 call, I'm more likely to choose the running aspect. And because I back my aggressive play to be pretty successful. So I think over the last 20 years, I've forged a pretty a decent reputation that you don't want to give me a bowl jack target, because 9 times out of 10 I'm going to hit it. So it's one of those things, you got to back your strengths, and I'm not going to hold back. I think the moment you have a doubt in your mind, your chances of success is going to decrease them exponentially.
That's fascinating. Do you think sometimes that gets into the head of your opponents and maybe sort of dictates some of the shots that they can play, which might be to your advantage?
Oh, 100%. Look, and especially early in the game, if you can hit one or two, you put a fair amount of doubt in their mind, and all of a sudden they don't want to put one too close, which gives you more room to draw a shot. So you've still got to, you've got to be able to strike when they miss. And I think that's, still very a huge key to the game, of being able to, make the most of your opportunities. But it certainly puts, once there's doubt in their mind, then, that's the time to strike.
Now, you mentioned you moved over to Australia. Why and when and why did that happen?
Yeah, well, I got approached in late 2006 about an opportunity to play Premier League in Sydney. So I moved over to Raymond Terrace, which is just out of Newcastle in New South Wales. January 2007. I was there for about 7 months. Didn't really set the house on fire, and things like that didn't really work out. But it was a great eye opener for me in that regard. So I actually came back to New Zealand for 5 months for preparation for World Bowls 2008. So I spent all my time in Christchurch pretty much, and then went back to Australia after that in end of January 2008, and moved to Tarrant Point in Sydney, which was just in the Cronulla Shire, and spent 8 years there. So had 8 years there, and then obviously the last 5 or 6 I've been down here in Melbourne.
Now, I'm fascinated. You travel around the world. You're playing these different tournaments. A lot of them, in Australia. You meet all different opposition, and then you meet Kelly McCarrahan. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I actually met Kelly for the first time at the World Championships 2008, as I just mentioned, and became pretty close friends for long distance friends for 2 or 3 years until. When was it? Adelaide, Asia Pacifics. We decided to spend a bit more time together and got to know each other a bit more, and started a long distance relationship from there, really. And it's been 5 or 6 years now that Kelly's been over in Australia with me, and it's got engaged about, what was it, 18 months ago now. Gee whiz, time flies when you're COVID struck.
Yeah, I know exactly about that. Now, this is a personal question. Who was chasing who the most? I mean, like, were you sort of, did you look at her and think, across a crowded room, think, oh, I'm going to slowly work my wiles on that lovely lady, or did she have her eye on you first?
Oh, it might be a bit of column A, bit of column B, I think. But we, when in 2008, we spent a little bit of time together, nothing major, but we were both at the College of Education, where both teams were staying at the same place. So we were in a big common room where everyone was together. So we spent, both teams spent a fair bit of time together. So it was one of those things where it was easy to get to know, the other players from other countries, and it was really cool.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's one of those great stories. Now, she's Canadian, obviously, and you mentioned you had this long-distance relationship. When the move came, how close was it that you moved there rather than she moved to Australia? And what was the final deciding factor?
Oh, I think the final deciding factor was that, for both of our bowls careers, the best place was probably Australia. So I think, it's one of those things where as long as that was, pretty dear to our heart, then, Australia's probably the best place for us to be. I don't know about at that stage moving to Canada. Certainly it's a possibility because, it really is a beautiful place, and, I could comfortably live in the cold. So it's one of those things that if I could get a job there, then that would be certainly a possibility. But I think as long as we're both internationally competitive in the lawn bowls, I think, Australia is the most likely outcome.
Right. Now, you mentioned engagement. Has a date been set for the big day?
No date set as of yet. Very difficult in these times until we can get people from Canada, New Zealand, potentially Japan, all in the same place at the same time. It's probably not going to be in the next 18 months, 2 years, I would suggest, but hopefully we can, get something sorted before then, but unlikely at this stage.
Right. Now, what we do here, as we come to the end of our chat, Ali, is I do a thing called Six and Out, where I just ask you six just trivial little questions, and you just you just give me an answer for it. All right. First one: have you got a pet, or have you had a pet?
No.
That's a good one, isn't it? So, see how easy it was. Does Kelly want one, and you're just being a meanie pants and not letting her have one?
We would love to have a pet, but unfortunately, because we've done so much travel, it wouldn't be fair on us or the pet to, to be shoveling it off to friends and family or whatnot every second week if we wanted to go away. So, we both absolutely love animals, but at this stage, it's just not viable.
Yeah, very sensible attitude. Very sensible. I wish I'd have been the same before my kids persuaded me to get the dogs. Sports teams, the sports team that you love the most, who?
Yeah.
Your greatest affection?
St. Louis Cardinals, baseball.
How on earth did you end up with them?
The first day that we got Sky Sport at home, there happened to be a baseball game on, and the St. Louis Cardinals were playing the LA Dodgers, and one of the batsmen hit 2 grand slams in the same inning. Only time it's happened in baseball history, and I've been fascinated ever since. Absolutely love the game to nearly the stage of obsession, so I'm told very reliably by Kelly, but no, absolutely love baseball. I love the different strategies of the game, and St. Louis has been my side since ever.
Fantastic. Yeah, I lived in Chicago when I was 17, and I became a Cubs fan amongst all like Bears, Bulls and Blackhawks type things. So I suffered for many, many years until just recently when we had to make probably the greatest World Series ever. But anyway.
Turn it up.
What sports person do you admire? That you look and think, I like the cut of their jib, and I wouldn't mind emulating certain of their qualities.
Roger Federer.
Do you know the amount of people that say Roger Federer when I ask that question? It's phenomenal. He really is.
The reason I say that, I'm such a fiery and combative person. You see a guy like that who can play 5 hours of tennis and not seem to sweat. Like, the guy's amazing, and has the most cool, calm, collected nature you could ever hope for, but still have that fire on the inside. So it's something that I would always aspire to be, but I don't know whether I'd ever get to.
Fair enough. It's good to know our limitations.
Yeah.
Have you got a favourite musical artist? If you could go to a concert, live or dead, who would you love to have seen?
I've only ever been to one musical concert, and luckily enough, it's my favourite band, which is the Eagles. So, unfortunately, didn't get to see all of the main guys that were there from the start. Obviously, Glenn Fry had passed away already, but his son was involved, which was pretty awesome. So, yeah, it was a very, very cool birthday present. We got to go and see the Eagles in Melbourne.
Just to make you feel bad now, I saw them not long before he died up at Mount Smart with Glenn Fry
awesome.
and Joe Walsh and Don Henley and all of them. Just to rub that one in. Movies. So you've only been to one concert. Are you a bit of a movie buff? Is there a movie you've watched you thought, I love that film, I could watch it again?
Oh, there's a few, but I think Shawshank Redemption's pretty high up there. But Saving Private Ryan would be pretty high up there as well. Those two for me would be pretty.
Well, there's no problem in seeing Shawshank Redemption. They seem to play it every year, so and it is an enjoyable film. Although sometimes a little bit of the plot near the end starts to get a little bit carried away. But that's the magic of Hollywood. And finally, this is not meant in any sort of threatening way or anything, Ali. But if you ended up on death row, what would be the last meal that you would have? What sort of food do you think? Oh, yeah, I'd love to eat that one more time.
I would go to a little restaurant in Adelaide called Tiffany Thai, and it was one of the first places that Kelly and I went to for a romantic dinner for two, and it's a beautiful little place in one of the main streets there, and their pork belly meal was unbelievable.
There you go. See, it's good that it's got great food as well as the sort of the romantic connotations there. And just finally, your plans, your immediate plans now, your sort of bowling aspirations once COVID gets out of the way. What are you looking to achieve?
Yeah, look, still very hopeful to be able to represent New Zealand at the Commonwealth Games. I think that's sort of the next international or major international event that is at the forefront of my mind. So. Obviously, to put good performances on the track when I can get back out and get selected for that, because I think that's one of the few things on the checklist that hasn't been achieved yet is a Commonwealth Games medal, and certainly one of those bright gold ones would be the best program there. So that's the first thing on my mind to try and achieve. So yeah, good performances on the track once I can domestically, that I get a decent crack at that.
Ali Forsyth, thank you so much for your time, and all the best for Kelly and you and your future, both on and off the rink.
Good on you, mate. Thanks very much.
They were rampaging along, won their first two games. They've lost their last two, but they could have probably won both of them.
A fantastic looking facility there in the deep south.
I'm sure they're going to come out firing tonight.
From memory, he was leading last week. Are you going to be leading this week, or?
For bottom with 6 points and second for bottom with 3. Yes and no. Yes and no. It paid off for them. They got a 2, double the 4 and won 6 points. Depends what the teams above you do, doesn't it?
Unbiased. Miles Davis.